Hey everybody, welcome back to another Musical Tip Tuesday. Today we're talking about something that really applies to everybody studying any kind of instrument, the metronome. So the metronome is our little friend here. This is going to be a great tool to use to get better at playing an instrument. It can also be a very frustrating and difficult thing to use. So I'm going to give you a couple tips of how to use the metronome to be really successful with it. So the first thing that you notice about a metronome, it's got a bunch of numbers on it. And really what the numbers are telling you is how many clicks per minute the metronome is going to go. So the higher the number, the faster the click is. So if I have the metronome set to 60, it's going to click 60 times during 1 minute, which means every click is going to be 1 second. The higher the number, the faster the metronome is going to go. So if I go to 120, what we call beats per minute, that's going to be half a second per beat. So a couple tips of working with the metronome. The first thing is always start slow. Start as slow as you can possibly stand. So if I have a piece that is going to go at 100 beats per minute, that's what they tell me when I look at the score. Instead of starting right at 100, I'm going to slow it down. I'm going to start at maybe 50 or whatever I'm comfortable with, but I'm going to go really slow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it a lot slower than what it recommends, and I'm going to practice it a few times. So I'm going to play it, I always like to tell my students, play it about 5 times with the metronome perfectly. So if you make a mistake, that doesn't count. Once you have it about 5 times, then go up a couple clicks. If it's supposed to be 100 and I'm starting at 50, maybe I'll go up to 58, maybe I'll go up to 60. Just depends how complicated the piece is. I'll play it a couple more times. I'll get it another set of 5 perfect playthroughs. And then I'm going to go up another 10 or 12 or 8, just whatever is comfortable by going up in between it. And then over a good course of practice session, I'm going to be able to go from 50, and I'm going to go all the way up to 100 beats per minute, which is the tempo that I'm going for. And I'm going to be able to play it perfectly starting from the whole way at 50 all the way up to 100. If you just start at 100, typically what happens with students is it's too fast for them, they make a lot of mistakes, and then they just keep practicing those mistakes over and over. So the first tip is go way slower than you think, speed it back up as you go. The next tip is to subdivide the rhythm. So what I mean by that is typically when we have the clicks, it's going to line up oftentimes to a quarter note. If we're playing in 4/4, that means every click is going to be a beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, etc. If it's a really complicated piece, make the beat go to a smaller subdivision of rhythm. So instead of it being a quarter note, maybe go to an 1/8 note. And we have to do a little bit of math here, but it's not very complicated. So let's say in this case, our tempo is supposed to be 60 beats per minute, and that's going to be to the quarter note. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Instead of going 60 beats to the quarter note, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to speed it up to 120 beats, and that's going to click at every 1/8 note. What it's going to do is it's going to help me keep track of the rhythm and count the rhythm a little bit more efficiently. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The more complicated music you have, the more that you can subdivide the rhythm. If you need to go to 16th notes, you need to go to 32nd notes, 64th notes. It doesn't really matter. You can make that beat go to a smaller rhythmic duration. A lot of times when we do that, we also need to slow it down, kind of back to the tip number 1, so you can combine those to really, really help. The third and final tip that I'm going to give you is that when you're practicing with a metronome, it is a terrible idea to try to play the whole piece with a metronome. It really very rarely works because if you make one single mistake, it derails the entire piece with a metronome. Really, when you're practicing with a metronome, you need to break it into smaller sets. So think of a measure, 2 measures, maybe 4 measures. If it's a really complicated piece, maybe even smaller than that, maybe even half of a measure is enough to work with a metronome. Once you get that phrase or that measure put together, then you can kind of combine it a little bit longer and a little bit longer from there. That little bit of intricate work can be a pain, but it's going to really, really help you get a lot better at the songs that you're playing. So hopefully these tips help you with the metronome. So good practicing. We'll see you next Tuesday with another musical tip.